going on the meeting, we want to recognize some commissioners. Jacqueline Easley. And I'm going to say a few words, and then Jackie is online. And Jackie, please feel free to, say something like a defining moment or something you're most pleased about during your years of service, because you've been an outstanding member. And Jackie, I do want to say to everyone who's listening, Jackie, this is her last meeting, so she will be participating tonight. Jackie Easley, she served on the Planning Zone Commission for nearly 12 years. Starting in 2008, Jackie was the chair of the commission during the adoption of the very significant planning effort, Plan DSM Comprehensive Plan, and the adoption of the city's new zoning code and zoning map. Jackie also has an extensive history of service to the community beyond this commission, including service on the Des Moines Public School Board, the Metropolitan Transit Authority Board, and as an executive at Mercy One. Jackie has certainly helped make Des Moines a better place to live, work, and play. So Jackie, we are going to miss you. And I was surprised. I mean, I didn't know about this until recently, but so we're really going to miss you. And so I'd like you to say a few words if you want.
Well, thank you, Jan. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to, and thank you for your very nice words, and I'd like to kind of share a story that I think is appropriate to this being my last meeting. So it's hard to believe, but it's been 3 weeks ago that I was standing on the corner of Merle Hay Road in Douglas with some very, very young girls who were there to protest or at least express their frustration with what they termed authority, just authority in general. And of course, they had some specific targets. And I know that a lot of it was emotion caught up, in the tumultuous times that have occurred since Mr. George Floyd's murder. And so I asked them, it was ironic to me because there was a vigil going on at the same time, a prayer vigil, why they wanted to be, standing here at this particular corner with a lot of other young people. And they said, well, we know that a lot of people are going to vigils and marches, but we don't believe that people are really listening to us. So I shared with them that I felt that way when I was their age. However, I always felt from the time that I ran for 6th grade student council president at my elementary school here in Des Moines, through this very moment, that the best way that I have been able to affect and impact change is by having a seat at the table. And I told him, I said, I know you don't understand that now at your age, but someday you'll be like me and look back at some of the decisions that you helped make, such as our planning and zoning decision regarding payday loan sites here in Des Moines, our discussion on where fireworks sales would take place, all the individual businesses that, small businesses and where they wanted to locate in the city and encouraging that growth, to Franklin Junior High, the really thoughtful discussion we had about that site, to, of course, zoning ordinance issues. I said, you don't understand now, but someday you'll understand how important having a seat at the table is and how your voice can be heard and your perspective can be heard. So who knows, I may see them again in the future. Everybody knows what happens that night, unfortunately. But I do really believe wholeheartedly that it is really important to have a seat at the table. I've appreciated this 12 years being able to do so. And when I spoke with the mayor, I told him that I don't think my voice is diminished in any way, and I hope to continue to serve our city. So thanks so much. Appreciate kind words of Mike. Appreciate your notes too.
Well, Jackie, thank you very much. And again, this, we're glad you're here tonight, and we're glad that you're going to be participating tonight. You will be missed. So thank you for sharing that story. We also want to recognize Jack Helmer. Jack has served on the commission for almost 10 years, starting in 2010. There's been so much change in Des Moines since 2010. Jack was part of major planning efforts that are being implemented daily, whether it's Plan DSM, Move DSM, zoning code, review of major projects. He certainly helped make Des Moines a better place today and in the future. And once again, both of these people, very strong commissioners. So, Jack, would you like to say a few words?
For your kind words. You are more than kind. It's nice of you to recognize us this evening. It's been a privilege to serve the people of Des Moines. I've told a number of people over the years when they ask about plan and zoning and the work of the commissioners, what it is that interests me. And I like to hear what the people have to say, what their issues are, and how they view things, which is often from vastly different paradigms. And then what I enjoyed was trying to find common ground and bring solutions to disputed issues. We have a fantastic planning staff, and they made life easy for us all. And the commissioners that will move forward are really, really great people. And those that I've been privileged to work with, I look forward to seeing on the other side of this COVID mess when we can, again, shake hands and exchange pleasantries face to face. I gave Jan a letter last week to share with you if she chose to, but of interest to me in this process is the fact that on September 28, 1856, my great-great-grandfather came to Des Moines as a stone cutter. He came from Germany, Wickdorf, Germany. He had nothing but the shirt on his back, and between 1856 and his death in 1901, a guy named Conrad Youngerman, my great-great-grandfather, was able to assist in building the city of Des Moines with his construction skills and his development skills, and ultimately was on the city council. So as I look back at the work that we were doing over the last almost 10 years and watched the renaissance that we had in the city of Des Moines, much of it in downtown where Conrad Youngerman started at the junction of the two rivers 160 plus years ago, I took joy in watching the reconstruction of the city in that area that Conrad got his start. That said, I guess I was occupying seat number 13. I didn't know my number until I talked to Councilman Mandelbaum last week. But I want to invite Johnny, who will be occupying seat 13, to have as much fun as I did and carry on the privilege of representing the people in Des Moines. Thank all of you for your friendship, and I do look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.
Well, Jack, thank you very much. And he did write a very kind letter, but instead of reading the letter, I wanted him to be here and say a few words and read the letter himself. So thanks, Jack, and I'd be glad to, I can share that letter for sure, but we're just nice to hear from you, and thank you for all you've done for sure. Now, as Jack said, Mike, did you want to say a few words or no?
Just very briefly, thank you to both of you for your service on this commission. As was stated, you've made this community a better place, and we look forward to continuing that legacy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. And as Jack said, Jack Helmer is going to be replaced by Johnny Alcivar, and Johnny's with us tonight. He will be participating. I'm going to introduce Johnny. Johnny is the program director for Proteus, which is an organization that provides agricultural workers and their families with affordable health care, education assistance, and job training. Johnny previously worked for the City of Des Moines as an assistant planner who reviewed commercial site plans as part of the Permit and Development Center planning staff. He provided a lot of great input during the preparation of Plan DSM and our new zoning code, and was an advocate for social equity throughout his career with the city and was a great team member. The following is additional information, okay, from the web profile at the Iowa International Center. Johnny immigrated to the United States from Ecuador when he was a teenager. He moved to Iowa from New Jersey to attend Iowa State and graduated with a BS and master's degree. Johnny remained in Iowa to apply his knowledge, skills, background to ensure the opportunity to thrive for all members of historically marginalized groups with a focus on the Latino immigrant community. So welcome, Johnny.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I was not expecting that. I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to contributing to the commission.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to seeing you. I do miss seeing people, seeing faces. So, well, with that, I think we'll get to the agenda. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plots, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Community Development Department staff 515-689-9485 for details on council hearings. Applicant will be given 10 minutes to present the request. If applicants wish to share materials not already submitted with the application, please email them to planning@dmgov.org so a staff host may be able to share them on the screen when you present. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Staff has attempted to compile a list of people who would like to speak on each item. Staff will first call on these people and then will open it up to anyone else who wishes to speak. To request to speak during the hearing, please use the raise hand function on Zoom via the internet or dial *9 on your phone. You will be required to give your name and address for the record prior to speaking. Also, we ask that you keep your microphones and phones on mute unless you've been given the chance to address the commission by the chair. Applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal if any opponent votes. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. The hearing will then be closed and the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report unless an individual present or member of the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to individuals or groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. Please know that typical accommodations may be limited by emergency requirements as issued by the state of Iowa and the City of Des Moines. We will start with roll call. Tyler?
Abby Chungeth.
Here.
Rocky Spizzato.
Here.
Will Page. Will Page. Johnny Alcivar.
Here.
Emily Webb. Dory Briles.
Here.
Jan Freed.
Here.
Jackie Easley.
Here.
Lisa Howard. Steve Wallace.
Here.
Carolyn Jennison.
Here.
Francis Bogus. Greg Wadier.
Here.
Greg Jones.
Here.
Will Page, you with us?
Yes, here.
And Lisa Howard.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have approval of the minutes from the last meeting or any correction?
I move approval. This is Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie. All in favor, Tyler?
Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar.
I guess I will abstain since I wasn't here.
Thank you. Dory Browse.
Yes.
Jan Freed.
Yes.
Jackie Easley.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Greg Wadier.
Yes.
Abby Chung.
Yes.
And Greg Jones.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-01.
Thanks, Tyler. Now we're going to turn our attention to the consent items, public hearing items. Item number 1, request from the City Address Administrator for review and recommendation of a proposed honorary street named Riviera Way for a segment of Corning Avenue between 6th Avenue and a terminus at the Des Moines River to the west of 7th Street. Is there anyone on the commission who would like to hear this item? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to hear this item? Someone online? Again, raise your hand using, at the bottom of the screen or *9 on your phone. Okay, not hearing any. Item number 2. City-initiated request for vacation of the east-west alley segment between Vale Street and East Railroad Avenue from Southeast 7th Street to Southeast 8th Street in the vicinity of property at 901 Southeast 7th, 709 and 714 Vale Street. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to hear this item? Anyone online? Is there anyone on the commission who would like to hear this item? Okay, hearing none. Number 3, request from Three Sons Enterprises doing business at Sunset Memorial Gardens represented by Blair Overton for the following for property located at 7601 Fluor Drive. Is there anyone in the audience or online who would like to hear this item?
Madam Chair, it looks like there's 2 attendees that have raised their hand.
Okay.
This is Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner.
Okay, thank you. So we will pull this from consent. Okay. Item number 4, request from Spot Free, request from Spot Free Car Wash represented by Alan Hansen for the following for property located at 3104 Indianola Avenue. Is there someone in the audience or online who would like to hear this item? Are you seeing any hands? Anyone on the commission who would like to hear this item? Okay, so I've been updated that there's a possibility for number 7. Let's look at number 7. Number 7, they're in agreement with the staff recommendation. So number 7 is request from Grasso Properties 1, represented by Steve Grasso, for the following for property located at 3206 University Avenue. The subject property is owned by Drake University. And we've been told that the applicant is in agreement with the staff recommendation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to hear this item? I'm not seeing any. It does help me, Eric, if you let me know if you see any.
Yeah. Madam Chair, this is Eric. I don't see them. We might remind them to raise their hand and press pound 9 if they are on their phone.
Right. Okay. So please raise your hand if you want to hear this item, or star 9 if you're on your phone. Is there anyone on the commission who would like to hear this item? Okay. I think we can move number 7 to consent.
This is Dory. I'll move 7 to consent agenda.
Thanks, Dory. Okay. Tyler?
Dory Browse,
Yes.
Jan Freed,
Yes?
Jackie Easley,
Yes.
Lisa Howard,
Yes.
Steve Wallace,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Greg Wattier,
Yes.
Greg Jones,
Yes.
Abby Chungeth,
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
Motion to move item 7 to consent passes 12-0.
Thank you. Tyler, can you remind me, do we need a motion on number 3 to take that off of consent?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. Now we need a motion on the consent to pass the consent agenda.
This is Greg Wattier. I move.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Greg. Tyler?
Just,
Mike?
yeah, just to clarify, that would be items 1, 2, 4, and 7?
Yes. So Greg's made a motion, and we're going to approve the consent agenda, or consent item.
Abby Chungeth,
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar,
Yes.
Dory Browse, Jan Freed,
Yes. Yes for Dory.
Yes.
Jackie Easley,
Yes.
Lisa Howard,
Yes.
Steve Wallace,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
and Greg Wattier,
Yes.
and Greg Jones.
Yes.
All right, motion to approve consent items number 1, 2, 4, and 7 passed 12-0.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, we're going to start with item number 3. This is the public hearing. Request from Three Sons Enterprises. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM, creating our Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan. B is review and approval of a large-scale development plan for a 33.92-acre non-city owned cemetery, including development of a new memorial chapel for a place of worship. And C, rezone property from P1 public, civic and institutional district to P2 public, civic and institutional district to allow development of a place of worship use within a civic building type and allow the future right to expand an existing non-city owned cemetery use through conditional use consideration. Eric?
Yes, Madam Chair. Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner. This item is a property with regard to a property located on Fleur Drive, south of Army Post Road. just to give you reference, east of the airport crossroads, PUD to the west, and there's a neighborhood area to the east. To the north is some open space that the applicant owns but is not included in the rezoning at this time. But north of that is a mobile home park, and then to the south is undeveloped agricultural land that's slated for business park development. So this is looking to the southeast at the northwest corner of the property. More centrally located, this is a north drive of theirs that has kind of a prominent entrance. You're looking across again to the south, more easterly, but southeasterly, and further to the south, the same direction. This is looking more to the northeast from the southwest corner of the property at Fleur, and then a little bit more to the north. Part of this rezoning, because it's over 5 acres, requires the consideration of a large-scale development plan, which they have submitted here in front of you and was included in the commission's packet. It essentially shows the layout of the circulation of the drives within the premises and shows what's going on with existing uses and proposed uses into the future. As you can see, they're showing future internments further to the east. They have sections that are named different areas within the cemetery itself. This area to the south is the subject of what's triggering the rezoning. There's an existing chapel at this location, generally, that they are looking to replace with a new chapel construction and development to move ahead with their needs. They're considering the possibility of having internment inside the chapel as well. The way that the current zoning allows city-owned cemeteries in the P1 district, but does not allow non-city-owned cemeteries. When the new zoning for the whole city came about, they were still legal as they existed, but this proposed project now triggers the need to get the zoning to allow a place of worship by right, so they could build that. With the P2 zoning they're proposing, they would be able to zone or be able to develop the chapel by itself as a matter of right with an approved site plan with that zoning. If they want to add internments in the building, that would trigger a further process of a conditional use review by the Zoning Board of Adjustment for cemeteries. And a little background there, the reason we treat these non-city-owned differently is to ensure compliance with certain standards for maintaining records and standards of upkeep and so forth, to ensure their perpetual existence. The state code puts some responsibility on municipalities to take over for situations where a privately owned cemetery would become a non-viable entity, and therefore the city then has some responsibility to pick these up and maintain them and deal with them in that event. And so we're very careful to make sure that they basically mirror the way we want to operate our city-owned cemeteries as well. So in the event that we would ever have to assume responsibility. So that's the main impetus behind having those two different types of cemeteries treated differently under the zoning. Right now at this time, the zoning is all that's under consideration. Again, if they choose to do more internments in the chapel, for example, that will go for a conditional use in front of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Their site plan development is theoretically can be approved administratively then if if they need other type design alternatives, that site plan could possibly come back in front of the commission if they need to have type 2 design alternatives, but that's not under review at this point tonight. The staff report is in your packet. Generally, it's a 33.92 acre piece. It's not in a recognized neighborhood. They did have a requirement to mail out to surrounding property owners within 250 feet to solicit their input and provide information about their request. I'll let them summarize that response to that process. We did put the information in about what is required if they do go through conditional use. There are supplemental review requirements that have to be complied with any future expansion of a cemetery or additional interments that they might be proposing. So we wanted to make you aware of what those supplemental use regulations were. Their proposed project will require site plan review and building code review with issuance of the required permits. They are going to, any new impervious or disturbed area over 10,000 square feet is going to trigger the requirement to comply with stormwater regulations for stormwater management. If they're disturbing over an acre in area, they will also have to have a SWIP or stormwater pollution protection plan reviewed by Iowa DNR and monitored by the city. Again, I spoke about the large-scale development plan. Again, the intent of that is to, depending on the type of development, is to look at how it fits within the framework of the surrounding context and whether adequate circulation is being provided, appropriate zonings are being considered for the use type projected in that large-scale development plan. So in this case, it's predominantly a single-purpose plan for their cemetery. It's large property area, so their intent is to use the entirety of it for that function, and then circulate internally as needed with private circulation systems. So in this case, there isn't any recommendation to modify that to extend public streets or any block design for other types of development. So we're comfortable with the proposed large-scale development plan as staff. Staff is recommending that the commission find the requested rezoning in conformance with Plan DSM, which has already shown this property for public, semi-public future use. Staff is recommending approval of the large-scale development plan, subject to amendment in the future of this plan for site changes that weren't shown. So if they are looking at major site changes that would be different from the large-scale development plan, we would want them to bring that back. And then Part C, staff is recommending approval of the requested rezoning of the property from P1 to P2, subject to compliance with supplemental use regulations in Chapter 134, Section 134-3.4.3B for any expansion of a non-city-owned cemetery, also subject to a conditional use approval by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We got one card for the consent map. I know we have a couple individuals that want to speak to this tonight, so I don't know if it's one of them or this one of them, but here's the property. I believe that one card is this property right here. I don't have anything further unless there's questions. I believe that the representative of the applicant is here this evening, David Benz, I saw on there. So he will be able to present their intentions and their information about their neighborhood outreach.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Will the applicant or representative state your name and address?
Can you hear me?
A little bit louder, please.
Okay. Okay, David Bentz, Bishop Engineering, 3501 104th Street in Urbandale, Iowa.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're just coming before you. The applicant and myself went to a city pre-app meeting. We're just wanting to, currently there's a temporary chapel that's been in operation for quite some time, and it was never intended to be there this long, and so they're trying to drastically improve that chapel. And when we went to the city pre-app meeting, we were notified that we had to do some rezoning of this property from cemetery zoning to a cemetery zoning that allowed private use, such as a chapel, and that's really all that we're here to do. We're not changing any uses that are currently going on. We're not changing anything other than just trying to develop a nicer chapel for the area, for the cemetery. And other than that, Eric kind of summarized everything else. And the owner is not with us tonight. I'd have to double check with them on how the neighborhood meeting went and all that, but it's really all I have at this point. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and you're in agreement with the staff report?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, I don't see anybody on the commission.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of the applicant? In support? Is there anyone who wants to speak in opposition or express concern? Please raise your hand or star 9 on the phone. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in opposition?
I know we had couple people had raised hands previously that there might be here that wanted to speak. If they could raise their hands with either the star 9 or the raise hand feature, that way we can call on you and unmute your microphone so you can speak.
Eric, I had written down that Mike Barnes and Eric Larson had raised their hands to speak. I had it written down as item 3. Do Mr. Larson or Mr. Barnes choose to speak regarding item 3? Please raise your hand.
I've unmuted. They're both raised. Mike Barnes is raising his hand, and he is unmuted, so he can speak at this time. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, my name is Mike Barnes. I'm one of the owners of the property across the street, Airport Crossroads. Steve Smith is the other owner. We're very much in favor of the chapel being remodeled into the church. I think it'd be great for the area. We only have a couple concerns. And I apologize, I don't have the lot numbers, but if you start at the bottom of our property, that first lot, we've always felt would be a great place for a PC, cross street, come and go, that type of thing, a C-store. And as you probably know or don't know, C-stores now sell liquor as well as beer and wine. And by supporting this, we want to make sure that we weren't excluding us from being able to sell to a person. Okay, we've been sitting this around for a long time. We don't have more obstacles in our way. The next couple lots up from that on the other side of the crossroads, we're concerned about it'd be a great spot for a hotel. There's already a few hotels up and down Bloor between the airport. With the new, with all the remodeling going on with the airport, hopefully the growth of the airport, we hope that will become a hotel site or could potentially become a hotel site. And our concern there is, again, the being able to sell liquor not only for bars, but hotels, at least in the past, but many of them want to do a restaurant, which would have alcoholic beverages. And I believe Eric's been in contact, or has been in contact with Eric about this. And it's my understanding that the convenience store is far enough away
from the commission? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition or express a concern?
Madam Chair, this is Eric Lundy. Eric Larson is unmuted, so he's able to speak.
Okay.
I would have to just say I'm not against any kind of rezoning or the improvement of the chapel or whatever, but more just that, like, at any point could any of the cemetery, the 33.92 acres, be rezoned to something else if it's not being used at some point besides the land that is directly behind my house as of right now that is slated to be used for like business park type stuff.
Madam Chair, this is Michael Ludwig, Planning Administrator.
Yeah.
Regarding the question, of course, a property owner has a right to request rezoning at any point in the future. It would go through the same process as we are here this evening on, which is notice to property owners within 250 feet of the proposed rezoning, and then a recommendation by the commission, and ultimately a public hearing and decision by the city council. So tonight's action does not preclude any future rezoning requests, nor does it require any future rezoning requests. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions from the commission? Okay, we'll have the applicant. You have 5 minutes to address the concern.
David Bence's mic is unmuted. Okay.
I don't really know all the requirements on the liquor license and that type of stuff, but really we're already doing everything that we're proposing to do at the chapel, at the cemetery. We're not proposing to do anything different. I think when the city went through and redid their zoning map, this is kind of what it was, and probably could have been rezoned that. It wasn't done. It was a private cemetery. I don't think the owners of the ground just bought this. They did the cemetery work. You know, who knows what the future holds. I don't know if that answers every question.
Okay, are there any questions from the commission to the applicant after hearing the concern? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Michael Ludwig. Regarding the liquor license regs, the separation distances are in the ordinance. They are subject to review and potential variance by the zoning board of adjustment. Certainly, the presence of a major arterial such as Fluor Drive, separating those uses from the cemetery use would certainly be a factor that would be considered by the Board of Adjustment, as well as staff in consideration of those requests. And as was also pointed out, the hotel use, if there's a restaurant in the hotel use, the restaurant can have beer, wine, and liquor sales. It would be just a question if it was a standalone bar that it may have to have some sort of conditional use permit from the Board of Adjustment. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. I think it's time to close the public hearing. So, commission, discussion from the commission.
Chan, this is Will Page here. Was there only one card that was returned in response to the proposed change?
Madam Chair, Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner. We only received the one card that was shown in the presentation, which was in favor. But we have the two individuals tonight expressing concern.
Thank you.
Greg Jones.
I'll move staff.
Okay. We have a motion. Very good. Tyler?
Will Page,
Yes.
Johnny Alcibar,
Yes.
Dory Browse,
Yes.
Jan Freed,
Yes?
Jackie Easley,
Yes.
Steve Wallace,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Greg Wattier,
Yes.
Greg Jones,
Yes.
Abby Chungeth,
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
Lisa Howard did leave us at 6:45, so a motion for item 3 passes 11-0.
Thanks, Tyler. We are now on item 5. Request from Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity represented by Tammy Freakus, appeal of the administrative denial of a type 1 design alternative in accordance with chapter 135, section 135-9.2.4b, as in boy, and 135-9.3.1b for property located at 1715 Clark Street to allow a one household house type B dwelling in an N5 neighborhood district to be constructed on the property without the required garage per section 135-2.16.3.E.5. Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Commission, Catherine Dostart, planner for the City of Des Moines. I will note that there's been one change. The representative tonight for Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity will be Lance Henning. As mentioned, this property is located at 1715 Clark Street, which is a little bit east of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway on the north-southbound section, and a little bit north of University Avenue. Just along the bottom part of the map, you can see King Elementary School. Couple of photos for some context. This is the property just to the west of the subject property tonight. Subject property, just a little bit clearer view. And then this is the property to the east. I will back up just a little bit. As noted, you will see that there is a garage located on the adjoining property to the west. Here is the site plan provided by Habitat. You can see that they are proposing a basement, or excuse me, a one household dwelling, and this one will have a full basement. And then they are proposing a paved driveway pad to the rear of the property, as well as a 10 by 12 shed. And that they're proposing that in lieu of the required garage. This is the map that staff generates when looking at whether or not there are garages in the 250-foot radius as required by the code. You'll notice that the green dots indicate that there either is a garage existing or it is a vacant lot, and therefore is assumed as codified that it would have a garage meeting the requirement of 288 square feet in the future. And again, we just note that the property to the south is the elementary school. As you know, you have the staff rec in your packet, but I'll just draw out a few comments. During our analysis, we noticed that there are 29 parcels located within the 250-foot diameter of the, radius of the subject property, and we found that 15 of these parcels meet the classification, so that's 51.7%, which brings us over that 50% requirement that triggers the necessity to meet the garage requirement. And then the fact that one out of the two lots on either side adjoining the subject property also has a existing garage. A couple of type 1 design alternatives have already been approved by staff for this house, just namely that they're not meeting the 1.5-story requirement, that they're just providing the 1-story, and then a 9% reduction in the overall minimum story height of 9 feet has been approved. Staff also just wants to note that the location of the proposed shed would be an adequate location for a garage meeting the requirement. A 12 by 24 foot garage would not be terribly much more than the 10 by 12 foot garage proposed. And the general character of the neighborhood is one that has garages, and as you know from the approval process of the code, staff finds that there's value immediately and in the long term for property owners in having a garage when they move into or soon after a property. And so based on the fact that this is a garage requirement that is codified, staff does not feel that Habitat has met the conditions that are codified to allow a waiver of the garage requirement, and so we are recommending denial. If there are any questions I can attempt to answer for the commission, I'd be more than happy to. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to share the consent map. As you can see, we did not receive any cards back from the notification mailing. So if there are any questions that I can attempt to answer for the commission, I'd be more than happy to. Otherwise, I know that Mr. Henning is available, and he does have a presentation which I will be assisting him with to flip through the slides.
This is Jackie. I do have one question.
Yes,
and while I do note that you did not receive any neighbors' cards back, this is a very active neighborhood association in this area, and I wonder if they receive notification from the city, of these items that come before Plan and Zoning Commission.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I wondered.
Yes, every month we send out a copy of the agenda, the preliminary agenda, to every neighborhood association in the city, and then specific notification is sent to any impacted neighborhood associations. As in this case, we would have sent it out to, forgive me, I'll have to go back up.
I think it's King.
It should be, yeah, it should be King Irving, and then, yes, it's also close enough to Mondemon Presidential that both neighborhoods receive notification.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Catherine?
Hi, yes, this is Johnny Alcivar.
Oh, yes.
I have a question for you, Catherine. You mentioned that the properties that were included with the green dots, the 15, those include the vacant lots?
That is correct, and that is part of our code where it does state that part of determining whether or not a parcel is required to have a garage is that it meets the character of the neighborhood, which has been defined by code as more than 50% within the 250-foot radius.
And without the vacant lots, it would be 12 garages that exist?
12 or... I believe you're right. I'm sorry, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 that were vacant.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Catherine? Okay. The applicant, please state your name and address, please.
Executive Director, Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity. We're located at 2200 East Huber. And that also want to say thank you and shout out for the service for Jackie Easley and Jack Helms. Thank you guys for serving this community. Appreciate your time being able to do that. We can go ahead and go to the first slide. So we are proposing, this would be the house plan that we are proposing. This is, so it would be the exact same as what is pictured here. This is a 1-story, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It does have a full basement. It's 1,158 square feet. I believe the actual lot location is in Mondayman Presidential with King Irving right next to it, right there. And then we would be asking relief from the garage to build the 10 by 12 shed. We can go to the next slide. So these are the houses on each side of the location on there. And then, as was noted, the 1719 Clark, which should be on your left here, has a garage. If you look at the whole block here, this falls right in the middle of between 17th and 18th Street. So there's essentially 5 lots there. Of those 5 lots, only 1719 Clark has the garage right now. So if you went one to the west of 1719 Clark, there's no garage, and 1711 Clark to the east there, and the next lot over also do not have garages. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We do believe that the character of this neighborhood is one with few garages, so you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So as we looked, the pink area would be the properties that were included in the 250-foot radius. The blue would represent the actual property location that we're talking about here. And then green would be an area that we surveyed beyond that. In that survey beyond that was 389 properties, and 60.6% of those had no garage on there. So the actual character of the neighborhood is a majority of houses with no garages on there. You can go to the next slide. And then the formula that is reviewed, that's in the zoning for the 250 feet around the property. So as it was mentioned, it's 29 properties. 11 properties around there have garages, 4 vacant lots, and that's how it gets to 15 of 29. The 4 vacant lots include the subject property itself, so the actual 1715 Clark, and then there are 3 other lots that are really owned by existing houses within the circle on there. So there's one lot on 18th Street that the neighboring house owns, and there is a lot on 17th Street that one house on the neighboring owns both those lots on there. The likelihood of those folks separating off that property from their existing property and building a new structure, which would count as a garage, is within the next 20 years would be extremely unlikely. So just wanted to note that to get to over the 50%, it is counting the existing lot, subject property we're talking about tonight, and 3 additional properties that are just essentially part of the yards of existing houses within the 250-foot radius. You go ahead and go to the next slide. And I also would like to point out that we do believe we are adding value to the neighborhood. One, as far as places to put materials and bikes and lawnmowers and that, the shed is there for that. The house will have a 1,158 square foot basement that's unfinished, so there's plenty of room for storage and aspects of that. This actual house plan, where we've built it in other locations, has appraised from $146,500 to $199,000. So if we just assume $146,500 as the value of the home once completed, that should say 1715 Clark on there. the assessed value with the 250 feet radius on there, that average assessed value within that radius of the existing houses was $66,800, and that was not counting 1711 Clark, which is a house that really looks like it needs to come down. So that house, the valuation was so low, so that would have lowered the average value down to about $64,000. So if you look at the expected value of the house at 1715 Clark versus the average value immediately around there, it's going to be 2.2 times greater than the average value around there. So it is adding value to the neighborhood, and we believe that is the right step to be able to be doing on there. I think that's, go ahead, next slide. Yeah, so we just, Habitat requests that the house be built without a garage, and so we're asking for your support for that, and that we will be building a 10 by 12 shed in lieu of that if you guys would give approval to that. So we thank you for your consideration and glad to answer any questions.
Questions for the applicant?
Jan, this is Will Page.
Will?
Lance, we're looking at, I think, a slide of the new River Birdland development. Is that correct?
Yes, those are the houses at the Birdland Pocket neighborhood.
Now, it's my understanding that these houses do not have garages. Is that correct, too?
That is correct. That was under a PUD.
Have you had any problems with these houses? There are quite a few of them. Have you had any problems with these houses not having garages?
We haven't, and I think it looks great, and I think the families have utilized the space well in there and are using the sheds as well.
Yeah, thank you.
This is Jan, and I Lance.
Because of the variations that we have at the lots and such on there, that if we try to build on slab on there, we don't gain a lot of savings on there.
Okay. Thank you.
Jan?
Yes?
This is Carolyn. Hey, I live 8 blocks away from this, and I was kind of going through my dog walk and thinking about who has garages, and we all have carriage houses that don't serve as garages or sheds, and it fits the neighborhood. We've lived here 22 years, and I think what they're trying to do, I think Lance and Habitat has done a great job fitting into the neighborhood, and I just wanted to say, from my perspective, living in this neighborhood, it works well. I mean, I think a garage may look a little bit out of place.
And Jan, this is Jackie.
Yeah.
It's so ironic to me that just the other day I sat at the launch at the One Economy 2020 report, which is a study of various financial indicators in our community, particularly among communities of color. And when they first launched this report in 2017, there was a disproportionate number of home ownership among residents of color in our community. And now today, these years later, it actually has flipped. So, one of the goals of the One Economy study is to promote home ownership, particularly in our community, and also with this being kind of a distressed time anyway, with many of our citizens who are struggling because of COVID furloughs and layoffs. To me, it just seems that being able to provide some residents with home ownership now is significant.
Thanks, Jackie. Other comments or questions? Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in favor of the applicant? anyone who wants to speak in opposition or express a concern? Okay, seeing none. I'll close the public hearing. So time for discussion from the commission.
Hi, this is Johnny Alcivar again. I'm looking at the staff report and the applicable regulations, more specifically section A, where it talks about the 50%. And I just want to point out that it does say developed lots. So if we were to take those 3 base lots out of the equation, it would be less than 50%. Just want to confirm that with staff.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Developed lot for our code is a lot that is buildable, has utility to it. So a vacant lot is a developed lot under our code and was be counted and assumed to have a garage under the new code. Thank you.
Other discussion on this item?
Yeah, this is Greg Jones.
That's right.
I'm going to defend our code. It seems like it's way easy for us to give up on what our code says. And I get the fact that they claim it's going to cost $15,000 extra to build a garage. I don't believe that it would compared to a shed because it's not that much bigger, but I'm not going to argue about that. What I will say is that if you put a shed in, the chance of a garage ever going in pretty much goes away, I think. And if we don't put one in here because we don't have some, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that we won't have in the future. So the argument then goes away when we look for 50% or whatever the number is. And I think a garage adds value. And so I won't support this no matter what the rest of you.
Okay, I appreciate your expression. Other comments, questions? Does someone want to make a motion?
Jan, this is Rocky.
Rocky.
I agree with Greg. I'll move staff.
Okay, we have a motion. We had some discussion. I do think that, I mean, my personal opinion is, it is, like Greg said, it is hard to move in the direction of that we want if we continue to waive it. So, anyway, we have a motion. So, Tyler?
Johnny Alcivar?
Hey,
Sorry, what was that?
that was no.
Okay, thank you. Dory Browse?
No.
Jan Freed?
No?
Jackie Easley?
No.
Steve Wallace?
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison?
No.
Greg Wattier?
No.
Greg Jones?
Yes.
Abby Chungeth?
No.
Rocky Spizzato?
Yes.
Will Page?
No.
So motion fails 3-8.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Tyler.
Jan, we would need to follow up with a motion.
Yes, this is Jackie. I move that we allow the variance to this request. If I'm saying that correctly.
Be a motion to waive the garage requirement, correct?
Yes. Thank you.
Will Page,
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato,
No.
Abby Chungus,
Yes.
Greg Jones,
No.
Greg Wattier,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Steve Wallace,
No.
Jackie Easley,
Yes.
Jan Freed,
No.
Dory Briles,
Yes.
and Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
So motion passes 7-4.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Now we are on to item 6.
Madam Chair, this is Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner. Item 6 is a request for waiver of a number of Type 2 and Type 1 design alternatives. Those of the Type 1 were denied at the administrative level. I'm going to go through all of them, A through H, and break them down, so I'm not going to just rattle them off at the moment here. The location of the property is in the Highland Park neighborhood at East Euclid and Wright Street. It's a vacant, currently it was a vacant gas station site that's been used for other purposes more recently. It's surrounded by single-family residential or one household dwellings. It's at the western fringe of the East Euclid and East 14th Street commercial mixed-use node. But it is still zoned MX3, which is a zoning that's intended for more highway-oriented use, which East Euclid here is U.S. Highway 6. So it is on that highway corridor. This is looking to the southwest from the north side of Euclid at the existing building, the corner of Wright Street. This is looking further up Wright Street. You can also see the existing convenience store that's to the north of it, still looking southwest. Looking straight west from the property east of the subject property from the east side of Wright Street, looking west down the Euclid. Looking more southwest at the home to the south of the subject property. Again, looking west. Kind of zooming in to get more sense of the current conditions of the property. The site plan was submitted after going to the Zoning Board of Adjustment to get approval for a store that would sell alcoholic liquor, wine, and beer. So that was approved under the MX3 zoning, and they proceeded then to look at the redevelopment of the site. They're generally proposing a layout here, and I should point out they're proposing 2 driveways. One of the appeals you're going to see is going to involve the number of drive entrances being proposed. This shows where the additions to the building, so the length of the building is going to get substantially, or the width of the building is going to get substantially larger. Because of this substantial change to the building area, we're triggering full compliance with Chapter 135 regulations, which, is essentially treating this as having to meet all the requirements of as if this was being developed as a new building. They're showing landscaping with street trees and perimeter trees, buffering along here and to the south with shrubbery and evergreen. I believe they've shown their dumpster enclosure there. And so you have all of this was included in your mailing packet. The SWIP is in there. This is the elevation being proposed. I'll probably zoom in a little bit so you can see the detail. They're going with composite siding and a brick base, brick veneer base, wainscot around the building. Then on the front, they're showing again the lap composite panel siding. And I will let them, expand on their design proposal with their architecture as well. Again, we're going to go through the staff report. It's a 16,800 square foot property. Again, it's at the fringe of the mixed use commercial area and the one family low density residential area to the south and west along the Highway 6 East Euclid corridor. It is in the Highland Park neighborhood area. The Highland Park representative was included in notification, and notices were sent to all property owners within 250. With regard to site plans, we don't send out response cards, but rather we indicated in the notice to contact staff, and staff will provide them with the site plan information, and then they can reply with written response. So we did, and I'll show you. We've gotten 2 responses on this property in particular on this request. This is the information on the Zoning Board of Adjustment when they considered the conditional use for the alcohol sales back in May, which was an amendment to a previous approval of such. Because they wanted to expand the area. Once they looked at the conditions, they realized that the conditions from earlier in 2019 were going to cause them to, at that cost, they decided to put more investment into the building project, and that increased the area. Therefore, they had to come back and get amendment to that approval in September of 2019, again in May. And then all of these conditions that they have to comply with for their use are listed in your staff report. And many of them are standard language for any conditional use in terms of operational and some physical requirements. They're limited to on signage and that type of thing, things like electrical outlets to prevent loitering, people wanting to charge their cell phones, that kind of thing. And then allowance for Des Moines Police to enforce their any loitering or trespassing issues. So then the applicable regulations for consideration of site plan appeals under the Type 2 requirements are listed in your staff report. Now I'm going to go over these one by one. The first one is the build to zone of 0 to 5 feet, which they are not going to meet since they're using the core of the project is the existing building, which sits about 60 feet back from East Euclid right-of-way line. So in that case, again, because they have to comply with all the standards with this project, they actually need the design alternative waiver for that provision to be set back that far. Number 2, or B, is a type 2 design alternative for surface parking and loading within the front and side street side yards. That's not, if this was a brand new project, that would not be, the code doesn't seek to have that design to be in front of the building, that the building should be placed at the street. In this case, because of the placement of the existing building, they've got their area that they have to work with to provide the off-street parking is to the north and to the east of the building somewhat, and really has to be in between, and this is a design alternative that would be required if they are not going to remove the building. Then letter C is a type 2 design alternative for provision of one entrance where 2 are required. With these additions onto the building, they are causing the building to become much wider at 126 feet in width. So their primary street frontage, their facade facing East Euclid is 126 feet, which triggers the need for a second entrance. They're only proposing a common entrance. My understanding is they're citing the need for security control at one entrance point versus multiple entrance points for the general public to come into the premise. I believe they are proposing a wider door front system that if you look at the elevations, while it's just one entrance, they have the capacity is there for essentially the same amount as like a two separate entrances. D is a type 2 design alternative to allow an entryway that's not recessed between 3 and 8 from the portion of the primary frontage facade closest to the street. Again, the intent of the storefront building type is that building would be built up at between 0 and 5 feet, and therefore the desire, when that is the condition, is that the entrances should be recessed back in from the front of the building, so that door access is not becoming an obstruction within the right-of-way. So the intent is, when these buildings are built to that the door would be recessed between 3 and 8. In this case, they're not up at the property line. They're back several over 60 feet. So they're not proposing to recess that entrance, and it would need relief to this provision. E is a type 2 design alternative due to the fact that it was administratively denied as a type 1, which it was eligible for, to allow retention of a driveway access from the primary street of East Euclid. East Euclid is considered a primary street or primary frontage. If you look at the building type regulations for storefront, it seeks to have one entrance from either an alley or a non-primary street, which they are also proposing from right. So this is an additional entrance over and above that they need a design alternative to allow. I think it would be looked at differently if their only frontage was Euclid, then they really wouldn't have another option, and then the city engineer would be able to support that. But in this case, the 2 requires the design alternative. Letter F is a design alternative with regard to the transparency. With regard to the minor facade materials waiver. The 60% of the street-facing primary frontage facades are supposed to be faced with a single material. In this case, they're looking at a combination of brick veneer, composite panel siding, and metal decking. None of these are considered to be a major facade material in the way the material tables are set up. The site plan proposes that that's proposed then is seeking essentially 100% minor facade materials instead of 60% of a major facade material. Staff is, in its review, did estimate that they would comprise approximately 50% of both the north and the primary frontage facade and the east primary frontage facade with these metal decking material. G is a type 2, again, administratively denied as a type 1. This is for the transparency that's between 2 and 8 feet above grade on the primary facade of the building. Is supposed to have windows and doors transparent to the interior. In this case, they're proposing about 50% when the requirement is 65%. That runs right around 23% deficiency in that amount of transparency, which again could have been considered as a design type 1, but was denied administratively. The last one, H, is with regard to the requirement for the heavy buffer, comprised of 6-foot tall fence, 2 overstory or shade trees, and 6 ornamental or understory trees per 100 lineal feet for any lot against any lot in an abutting N district, which is to the west and the south. The site plan is proposing a row of shrubs along the west side yard and indicates that the existing solid fence is on the adjoining property, and they are not proposing a fence at this time. There was some type 1 design alternatives that were administratively approved. One of them was provision of streetscape for storefront building. Given the volume of East Euclid, we didn't think of it, even though it was using the storefront type, we did not believe that this was a more walkable corridor, that this was more of a highway corridor, and allowed just the standard streetscape with the street trees and the 5-foot sidewalk and the perimeter lot landscaping. And then number 2, we approved the allowance for more than 9 parking spaces in a row without an intervening interior landscape island. And in this case, we believe that the island would have prevented the circulation necessary or the ability to get the number of parking spaces they should provide. So that was waived administratively. Staff's concern, A, B, C, and D essentially are sort of impractical to meet in the case of retaining use of the existing building. Therefore, staff is not really taking issue with design alternatives outlined in A, B, C, and D. However, we recommended denial of the other 3 at the administrative level and believe that they can be met. And also, again, are recommending denial of E, F, G, and H. We think these are achievable standards and should be met with the proposed project at this time. So again, we're recommending approval of the requested design alternatives for A, B, C, and D, and then staff is recommending denial of the proposed design alternatives listed in section E, F, G, and H.
Questions for Eric?
I'm not done, Madam Chair. So we did get communication from 2 individual property owners to the west and south, and you'll see that on the map here after I scroll through their communication. Some of them are more directed towards the use itself, but some of them do have to do with the physical development of the being proposed.
Hello, Eric. This is Greg. The use is allowed by right, correct?
It's not allowed by right, but it was granted as conditional use by the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Got it.
And it's gone through that public process. In fact, it's gone through twice because they amended it to allow the expanded size that they are now proposing.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm going to scroll to the next communication unless somebody else thinks I need to leave that for you to look at. This one's more via email. The other one was an attachment to the email, so that's why it didn't come in that format. And you can see that the two communications, I'm going to try to zoom out here so you can see the whole thing. The two are from the directly abutting property owners. Now, Madam Chair, I'm available for any questions.
Sorry, Eric.
That's all right.
Are there questions for Eric from the commission?
Jan, this is Will Page here.
Yeah, Will.
Yeah, I have a question, Eric. I'm looking at the plan, and on the addition to the west of the building, it's in one of the plans, it's identified as the beer cave. And I assume that that means that there's a lot of coolant that is used to keep the beer cold. And so my question is, and I assume that those are going to be located on the roof of the addition. My question is, has the city conducted a noise evaluation for this property? It's very tight there against the properties that are located on the west. And so that's my question. Has the city conducted some kind of a noise evaluation to give us an idea what kind of problem that might be?
Madam Chair, Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner. Will the standards don't require that. They do have to meet the sound and ordinances for the city, of course. They are also obligated to screen any rooftop mechanical equipment, but we don't ask for a analysis on the sound, and it's not one of the standards that they have to achieve through the process. I would think if there's concern about that would be something that would have to be asked of the applicant and brought back if it was absolutely determined to be necessary. Again, I don't think in our review that there was concern beyond what you would expect with commercial property adjacent to the residential. Again, the buffer, the standards in the code presume some level of need for mechanical equipment on properties. I know that you're saying that it's a cooler and maybe has a higher frequency of compression on that's something to ask the applicant. But yes, the answer is I believe some of these are these walk-in coolers that are going to be part of this project. So if sound from within the building is an issue, certainly you can ask for something architectural. Presumably they'll be screening the equipment on the roof with the architectural screening as required by the ordinance, and that was no waiver was requested of that provision. certainly they're going to have to achieve that visual screening, and that should provide some noise dampening. To what extent, I couldn't say. So if there's something additional needed, certainly more landscaping would mitigate that with regard to tree plantings and evergreens. And, you know, the fencing, again, is another built-in requirement that part of the job is not just to visually buffer it, but also buffer things like noise and debris and things like that from surrounding property. So that's something that the commission definitely can take into consideration.
Thank you for explaining that, Eric. I'd ask some of our architects on the commission during the discussion among the commissioners themselves if there's something that can be done in terms of the screening on the roof, if there's something that can be done to mitigate noise that comes from these compressors, because the beer cave is very close to these two properties that are to the west. So I'll defer that to the discussion later on. Thank you.
Other questions for Eric at this time from the commission?
Yes, this is Johnny Alzawar. I have a question for Eric. I noticed that one of the letters that was received had some concerns about lighting. Is this proposal required to submit a lighting plan as part of the development?
They're obligated, this is Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner, they're obligated to meet the requirements for cutoff fixtures and light fill onto adjoining properties. So there's a provision in the ordinance. Since this, you know, they aren't required to provide a overall photometric as part of this project directly, and maybe the applicant can speak to whether they've done that analysis, but they certainly have to demonstrate that they have the cutoff fixtures, down-directed lighting, and that the light won't spill onto adjoining residential properties. And, you know, there's also provisions if that occurs in the future that they're subject to mitigation or enforcement by zoning enforcement. That was a change in our new code versus our former code. Gives a lot more leeway for zoning enforcement to follow up on light nuisance complaints and require the property owner demonstrate that they're complying with the down directive and the heights of the standards, et cetera. So again, no photometric is a absolute requirement with their submittal. If they would have had a gas canopy and then we would have asked for those requirements.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Other questions? Okay, it's time for the applicant. Please state your name and address.
I think, is David Bent here?
This is David Bent, Bishop Engineering, 3501 104th Street in Urbandale. Sorry, I was waiting. I was thinking the architect. I'm filling in for Mike Whaler, who is on vacation for the 4th of July weekend. And the architect was supposed to be on to speak on this project. I don't know if he's there or not, but I can start with...
Madam Chair, I also see Mark Hadaway. Is that the architect, David?
I believe so.
Okay, so he's got his hand raised, so he can also speak.
Okay, thank you.
I can start on the site stuff if you'd like, though, while I'm on.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So I think access onto Euclid, currently there's 2 accesses onto Euclid, and we're asking for the one access to be granted because it'd be a fairly long dead-end drive. If there's no parking stalls available, it creates congestion. And there's also a trash enclosure that is needed on the facility, and it'd be very hard to maneuver to get into the trash enclosure to access that. and also firefighting if they pulled in. That would allow them a way out as well, to have that one access. I will point out that it does line up with the access across the street, and it is kind of mid-block. So it's not like it's right, third block or anything like that. It's pretty close to the middle of the block between the two public streets. So the real reason for that access is just because the long dead end, and to allow for people to get in and out circulation-wise, for fire to get in and out circulation-wise, and for trash to get in and out circulation-wise. That'd be item E, I believe. And at that, I'll turn it over to the architect at this point.
This is Mark Hathaway, the designer for Hinder. And we.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Sorry, yes. Can you hear me better now?
That's better.
Okay. We were going to address I believe it was F, the waiver for requirements of major facade to cover at least 60%, as well as G, the waiver for the requirements for the facade to cover 65%. We made adjustments according to meet those. If that's not sufficient based on the calculations you come to, then we're willing to meet those calculations. A little clarification would be, so we could understand a little better, but 60% of the major facade and 65% of the windows is more than 100% of the facade itself. So how is it best approached to provide 60% of the major facade material as well as 65% windows? We don't have a problem meeting that. Just can we understand what you're requesting with those percentages?
The calculation is exclusive of the window and door opening. So your actual total is based on excluding that material.
All right. So would we calculate as you can see, there's a parapet roof there that's about 6 feet of one material. Then I've got a secondary material, which is the composite siding, and then the veneer, the brick veneer below that. Do I calculate the entire front, including the parapet, or just the siding and the brick?
Madam Chair, I'm going to look at that, how the calculation is shown in the, unless Mike has it off the top of his head, I'm going to look it up to make sure I'm giving you correct information.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll try to get back on that.
Okay, so this is Mark Getaway again. We have no problem with meeting those. It's just a matter of understanding what percentages you would like to see applied or provided on the construction document, and what exactly, what formula we should apply to provide you with that correct percentage.
Jan, this is Greg Jones, if I may.
Yeah, please.
It looks like they're willing to meet whatever staff, all they need to do is communicate together, and they're willing to meet F and G, it seems like. So in the interest of time, to me it would mean, can we get beyond that and talk about H and E, which are the points of contention, I would think.
I would agree with that. So, other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, this is Greg Wattier. I didn't hear the civil engineer or the architect talk about H. Are you guys willing to comply with H, or is that one that you're content?
Can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay, this is David Vance, Bishop Engineering. I think the argument, like I said, I'm filling in for Mike Whaler at our office, so I don't know all the background on everything here. But my understanding is there's an existing fence just on the neighbor's property line, so we were just proposing to do the landscaping, and their fence would be adequate. I think that's what we're proposing. I don't know that we'd be opposed to doing another fence, but they'd be right next to each other.
Well, it'd be nice if we knew if it was an existing, if it was a 6 foot tall fence, if it was solid, if it was in good shape. It'd be nice if we had that information.
One of the letters.
Janet's Will Page here. I have a question about the fencing too, but I also have a procedural question. Have David Vance and Mark Hadaway completed their presentation, or do they have more to say? Because we're already beginning to question them. If they have more to say, I'd like to hear that first before we go into the questions for them.
Okay, Will. Okay. Do you have more that you want to provide us?
This is David Vance. I don't really have much more than what Mark or what Eric Lundy already presented in the civil side.
Okay.
This is Mark. Regarding letter H, providing stress, which I apologize for not knowing a little bit better which fence you're referring to. There is a chain link fence from the south side of the property, and a wooden fence on the west side of the property. So the wooden fence is at least a minimum of 5 feet. The chain link fence on the south side of the property is obviously very opaque and also no more than, I would say, 3.5 to 4 feet. Additionally, we were willing to provide a photometric regarding the lighting on the site. We're willing to provide a photometric if there is an issue that needs to be addressed with the lighting.
Okay. They're done presenting. So do we have questions of them, either one of them?
This is Will Page again, and I do have a question. We were talking about fencing.
Yeah.
Mr. Bench and Mr. Hadaway, does your client own the chain link fence?
Which one? I would say that the one owned, I'm not sure if the client owns it. This is Mark Hadaway, I apologize. The one on the south side of the property, I would assume they did not, because it's divided along residential. The further south is the residential houses fencing off their yards. To the west side of the property, that I cannot speak for sure if they own that fence or not.
This is David Benson, Bishop Engineering. I don't believe they would own that fence. It definitely looks like a residential wood privacy fence. It is a privacy style fence, at least up next to Euclid. As you can see that from a Google image street view.
But Mr. Benz, there's also a chain link fence on the west side and the southwest part of the property. Yeah, the arrow is going up and down through there. On the west side of the property, there's a chain link fence in through there as well. And it's shown on your plan, both of these are shown on your plan saying existing chain link fence, 3 feet. Now, I asked the question just to find out who actually owns this. and there's a question evidently, but the fact of the matter is the chain link fence on the south side of the property is in very poor condition indeed. In fact, the top rails in some sections are completely gone. That's hardly, in my opinion, whether it's yours properties or someone else's, hardly sufficient to, do what needs to be done. But we can talk about that later. Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question for Mr. Hadaway. With the prior conversation about the potential rooftop mechanicals, is that planned for this development? And if so, will the parapet wall cover those?
This is Mark at Accurate Commercial. I think there was a miscommunication. There are no rooftop units. The condensers for the coolers will be on the ground and screened with shrubbery. Same for the HVAC.
Thank you.
Other questions? Is there anyone else who wants to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone who wants to express concerns? Anyone in the audience or online who wants to express concerns?
Chair, this is Jason Van Essen with the city planning staff.
Yeah.
I noticed under the attendees, we have a person that has their hand raised, but they don't have their name displayed. If they have a way to give us their name, or if they can at least start with their name and address when they speak, could let them speak.
Jason, I just saw that. Yeah. It's a Samsung phone.
I'll go ahead and allow them to, okay, somebody's allowed them to talk.
Okay.
We'll unmute them.
Name and address, please.
My name is William Lowe. The address is 3515 East 8th Street. I did send a letter in.
We did read it. We read the letter, but go ahead, sir.
Right. The concern I have that's been raised is the existing fence. They are stating that there is a wooden fence that is on the opposite property of mine. I have a full lot. There's 2 half lots to the north of me. The one property has a wooden fence. I have a chain link fence. That is my concern, is the chain link fence isn't going to block noise. It is not going to block the litter. It is not going to block anything because it is a chain link fence.
This is Mark at Accurate. We will have no problem putting up a wooden fence for you. I'm sure we can discuss with Ender Singh, the property owner, and address your concerns. And he will have no issue with putting up a wooden fence to provide a barrier between your property and his business.
Okay, thank you. Another concern I have, if you may allow me to ask.
Go ahead.
My concern is and it's stated in the letter, my interactions with the owner is he is basically coming across that he is going to let the Des Moines Police Department be his private security. If anybody wishes, I will be more than happy to send that correspondence along. I would like to know or have some kind of assurances that he is going to maintain some kind of security on his own to prevent property owners that are adjacent to having to go through the issues that come along with these types of business.
Okay. Are there questions from the commission of Mr. Lowe? And then we'll get to a rebuttal here. So are there questions from Mr. Lowe? Okay, Mr. Lowe, do you have any other concerns?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, the applicant, you have time to address concerns. So either Mark or Dave.
This is David Best again, Bishop Engineering. it sounds like accurate, said we'd be willing to put a fence up, so I take it that takes care of item H. And so I guess the main issue then is just the drive access and really needing a place to come in and go out for emergency type vehicles and trash vehicles and just general circulation of the site. Due to the existing conditions and the existing building being there, we really don't have a lot of opportunity to do other types of access in and out of this site. And we just feel that one access is not adequate.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant from the commission?
It's Will Page again, please.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Benson, Mr. Hadaway, Mr. Lowe had I think it was you, Mr. Hadaway, had said that you would put up a wood fence along, when you were talking with Mr. Lowe, he lives to the west, but the same problem exists to the south with a chain link fence that's inadequate. So my question is, would you be willing to put up a wood privacy fence to meet code along that property line as well?
Yes, sir, that would not be a problem.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Eric Lundy, Senior Planner. One thing I should point out is there would be limitations on the height of that fence as you got towards Wright Street. That would have to be reduced to 3 feet in height as you get in front of the house that Mr. Gary DeBoard owns. So basically the height of that fence has to drop when it gets to the front yard area of the adjoining residence to the south.
Eric, well, again, could that be a zoning board of adjustment if the property owner to the south wishes?
No, that would be something in the purview of the Plan and Zoning Commission to grant that as a design alternative as well. I'm just saying the standard is that. And the reason for that is just the visual obstruction of the front yard areas of adjoining residential. And then the other, I did get an answer on the major facade material question, and it indicates that it reads specifically a minimum of 60% of each street-facing and primary frontage facade, not including window and door areas. So the 100% is based on the exclusion of window and door openings. And then, so that portion has to be at least 60% of a major facade material. And in this case, none of them were hitting that percentage. So that was what was in question there.
Okay, thanks for the research, Eric.
And this is a building longer than 120 feet, so it does say it should be faced of a single facade material. 60% of each 90-foot length shall be. So it even breaks it up to make sure that separate lengths of 90 feet have that provision individually. So.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Other questions for the applicant? Okay, it's time to close the public hearing. We've heard a variety of perspectives here on a number of issues. Commission discussion.
It's Will Page again. I would move the staff recommendations A, B, C, and D to be approved, and E, F, G, and H to be denied. H being then moot because the architects have agreed to the fence.
Madam Chair, this is Eric Lundy. I think if they want the fence to be, that needs to be a condition of that recommendation.
I'd accept that as a friendly amendment, Eric.
Well, yes, I'm not making amendments for the commission, but I just wanted to point out as a clarification.
Okay, so we'll repeat your motion again, please. I mean, you've approved, you want to move A, B, C, D.
Yes. And deny E, F, G, and H.
And then do you want to say something about the fence?
A wood privacy fence to meet code standards on the east, on the west and the south sides of the property.
Okay. Tyler, do you have that?
Yeah, I believe so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. So, Tyler, go ahead.
Dory Browse?
Yes.
Jan Freed?
Yes.
Jackie Easley? Steve Wallace?
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison? Greg Wattier?
Yes.
Greg Jones?
No, because of E.
Abby Chungit?
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato? Will Page?
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar?
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison? Carolyn muted.
This is Eric Lenny. No, she's showing as unmuted.
You want to call Jackie again?
Jackie Easley?
Yes, sorry.
And Carolyn Jennison? Are you there? So without Carolyn, we'll have motion carries 9-1.
I would have 901 as an abstention for Carolyn.
Yeah.
Or 911.
9-1-1, yep.
Okay. Thank you. I believe that's it. I did want to thank Jackie again. This is her last meeting, so thank you again, Jackie, for your long years of service and wisdom. Mike, do you want to say something? Or wait, do we have to adjourn?
Well,
not yet. Okay.
Okay, just very quickly, want to wish everybody a very happy and safe 4th of July weekend. And next meeting will be a virtual meeting as well on the 16th. So be safe, be healthy. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes?
This is Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner. There's one, you have to dispose of a number 9 item for setting up nomination for a vice chair for the next Plan and Zoning Commission meeting.
Okay.
So if we get a nomination slate to be presented at the next hearing, then you can elect the new vice chair to replace Jack Helmer.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me, Jackie. I thought our officers were Dan, Dory, and Emily.
That's what I was thinking.
If you go back and look at your minutes, we elected in January Jan, Dory, and Emily.
We'll double check that.
Yeah, Jackie is absolutely correct. I served as the chair of the nominating committee, and we nominated and the commission approved Jan as the chair, Dory as vice chair, and Emily as the second vice chair.
Thank you very much for that clarification. We apologize. Thank you.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
They have 12 years of memory.
Well, everyone stay safe. Thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody's cooperation on this. And thanks to staff, because there is some extra work that goes into this. So thank you. Bye-bye.